I still don't know how he did it, how he found his way back, but he did. And when I opened the door that Tuesday afternoon, there he was. A ghost. My heart stopped. Just stopped. Right there in my chest, a cold, hard lump of stone. He was a mess. His golden fur, once shiny and full of life, was matted with dirt and what looked like old burrs. He was skinny, painfully so, ribs showing through his shaggy coat. One of his ears was torn a little at the tip, and he had a gash on his front paw that looked mostly healed, but still angry red. His eyes, though, those were the eyes I remembered. Big, warm, brown eyes, full of a surprising intelligence. And right then, full of a desperate weariness, but also, unmistakably, recognition. "Gus," I whispered. It was barely a breath, my voice shook. I probably looked like a maniac standing there, staring at a dog like he was some kind of mythical creature. But he was. He was my mythical creature. He was the dog I lost. The dog she took. The dog who was supposed to be gone forever, he whined, a soft, pathetic sound. Not his usual happy bark or excited yelp. This was a sound of pure exhaustion and relief. He took a hesitant step forward, then another. His tail, which used to wag like a metronome on overdrive, gave a weak, slow thump against the porch steps. Just one thump. Like he was too tired for more. My vision blurred. Our tears pricked at my eyes so fast, so sudden. They just erupted. I hadn't cried like that in a long time. Not since the day Sarah packed her bags. Not since she loaded Gus into her car. Not since she drove away and left me standing there, alone in a house that suddenly felt 10 times too big and echoingly empty. That was a year and a half ago. 18 months of silence. 18 months of missing a furry shadow. A warm weight beside me on the couch. The happy clicking of nails on the hardwood floor. I dropped to my knees, not caring about the dirt or the sharp pebbles digging into my skin. "Gus! Oh my God, Gus!" He hobbled the last few steps, and then he was in my arms. Or rather, I was holding him. He leaned into me heavy and solid despite his thinness. His head pressed against my chest, and I could feel the faint tremor of his butt. He smelled like dirt in the outdoors and something vaguely metallic like old blood. But beneath it all, he smelled like home. He smelled like Gus. I buried my face in his scruff, tears streaming down my face, soaking his matted fur. He licked my ear once, a rough, dry lick. It was the most comforting thing I had felt in what felt like a lifetime. "How did you get here, boy?" I mumbled into his fur. "How did you find me?" He didn't answer, of course. He just stayed there, letting me hold him, letting me cry. It was like all the grief and sadness and loss I had pushed down for months, all the things I told myself I was over, suddenly burst open. It was Gus. My Gus. He was back. I finally managed to pull myself together enough to stand, keeping an arm around him, supporting his weight. He was trembling. He needed water. He needed a vet. He needed everything. Carefully, I guided him inside. He moved slowly, deliberately, like every step was an effort. He sniffed the air tentatively, his nose. He looked around the living room, his eyes scanning familiar furniture, familiar smell. He walked right over to his old water bowl, still sitting in the corner of the kitchen, even though it had been empty for months. I just couldn't bring myself to put it away. It was a silent testament to what used to be. I filled the bowl immediately. He drank like he hadn't had water in days. Long, desperate gulps. Water sloshing over the sides of the bowl and onto the floor. I watched him, mesmerized, a knot of emotion in my throat. He lifted his head, gave a small sigh, then started drinking again. Then I went to the pantry and pulled out an old bag of dog food. It was stale probably, but it was all I had. I poured a small amount into his food bowl. He sniffed it, then began to eat. Slowly at first, then picking up speed. It was clear he was starving. My mind was a whirlwind of questions. Where had he been? What had happened to him? Why was he so thin? And Sarah? What about Sarah? Did she lose him? Did she abandon him? The thought sent a fresh wave of ice through me. Had she really just thrown him away? I knelt beside him, stroking his back gently as he ate. His fur felt rough, not soft and luxurious like it used to be. Every touch was a reminder of the hardship he must have endured. But he was here. He was safe. For now that was all that mattered. He finished the food surprisingly fast, then looked up at me, his eyes tired but full of a quiet plea. He wanted something. Comfort. Reassurance. Or maybe just a soft place to rest. I remembered his old bed, tucked away in the back of my closet, covered in a dusty sheet. I pulled it out, shook it off, and laid it down in the living room. It was old, faded, and had a familiar dent where Gus used to curl up. He walked over to it, sniffed it carefully, then circled once, twice, before collapsing onto it with a deep sigh. He curled into a tight ball, his head resting on his paws. His eyes still open, fixed on me. They held a silent conversation, a promise he was home. I sat on the floor beside him, just watching him breathe, watching his chest rise and fall. The shocking jolt of his sudden reappearance had given way to a profound sense of peace. He was here, he was back, but a new kind of dread started to creep in. What now? What did this mean for me? For Sarah? And for Gus himself? I knew deep down this was just the beginning of another difficult chapter. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. Goose was here, and somehow that made everything feel possible again. It felt like a lifetime ago. The day I met Sarah. I was in college, just finishing up my degree, living in a small apartment that smelled faintly of instant noodles and stale coffee. Sarah was a friend of a friend. She had just moved to town for a new job. She was bright, bubbly, with a laugh that could light up a room. We clicked instantly. It was one of those whirlwind romances, where everything felt easy and natural. We spent hours talking, walking, just being together. Our relationship grew fast. After a year, we decided to move in together. That's when the idea of getting a dog came up. I had always wanted a dog, but living alone, I knew it wasn't fair. With Sarah, it felt right. We spent weeks looking online, visiting shelters, reading up on breeds. We wanted a rescue, a dog who needed a home as much as we wanted to give one. One Saturday, we drove an hour out of the city to a small rural shelter. The place was bustling, full of barking dogs and eager volunteers. We walked through the kennels, stopping at each one, talking to the dogs, trying to feel that connection. Some were too big, some too small, some too energetic, some too shy. We were starting to get a little discouraged, thinking maybe our perfect dog wasn't there that day. Then, at the very end of the last row, we saw him. He wasn't barking or jumping. He was sitting quietly at the back of his run, watching the chaos with calm, intelligent eyes. He was a golden retriever mix, maybe a year old, with beautiful shaggy fur that was a little too long and tangled. He looked a bit sad, a bit resigned. I knelt down. "Hey there, fella," I murmured. He slowly walked forward, tail giving a hesitant wag. He sniffed my outstretched hand, then gently licked it. His eyes met mine, and it was like he was looking right into my soul. Sarah, standing beside me, gasped softly. "Oh, Alex," she said, her voice full of wonder. "He's beautiful. A volunteer came over." "That's Gus," she said. He He was gentle, playful, but not overly boisterous, and he loved to cuddle. He settled himself at our feet, occasionally nudging our hands for a scratch behind the ears. It was decided. Gus was coming home with us. The drive back was filled with excitement. Goose sat in the back seat, occasionally poking his head between the seats to nuzzle our shoulders. He whined a little bit, but it was a happy sound. When we got him home, he explored every inch of our new apartment with intense curiosity, sniffing every corner, every piece of furniture. We had bought him a big, comfy bed, and he immediately made himself at home in it. Life with Gus was everything we had hoped for, and more. He was the perfect dog. Loyal, affectionate, smart. He quickly learned tricks, loved his walks, and was always happy to see us. He had this goofy habit of bringing us his favorite squeaky toy every time we sat down, dropping it at our feet with an expectant look, as if saying, "Okay, playtime now." He became the heart of our little family. Our routines revolved around him. Morning walks, evening cuddles, weekend trips to the dog park. Sarah adored him. She would spend hours brushing his fur, talking to him in a baby voice, letting him lick peanut butter off her fingers. I loved watching them together. It reinforced my belief that she was the one. We were a team, a family, and Gus was our first furry child. We moved into a small house with a yard a year later, mostly for Gus. He loved having space to run around, chasing squirrels and rolling in the grass. Our life was comfortable, happy. We had our disagreements like any couple, but they always felt minor, easily resolved. Gus was always there, a silent, comforting presence. He was there when we laughed, when we argued, when we curled up on the couch to watch a movie. He was a constant, solid anchor in our lives. He was my best friend. More than a pet, he was family. He was the furry embodiment of the love Sarah and I shared. We often joked that Gus was the glue that held us together. We'd say, if we ever break up, who gets Gus? And we'd laugh, because the idea of breaking up seemed impossible back then. We were so sure of our future. We were so sure of it. Looking back, I can pinpoint the moment the cracks started to appear. It was subtle at first. Sarah started working longer hours. She was stressed, irritable. Our evenings became quieter. The easy laughter was replaced by strained conversations or just silence. Gus seemed to notice too. He'd often sit between us on the couch, looking from me to Sarah, as if trying to understand the shift in the atmosphere. His tail wagged less enthusiastically, his head cocked in confusion. Tried to talk to Sarah, to ask her what was wrong, to suggest we spend more time together, just the two of us, or with Gus. She'd brush me off, saying it was just work. She was tired. Nothing was wrong, but something was wrong. I could feel. Comfortable warmth of our relationship was slowly, imperceptibly turning cold. The laughter that once filled our home started to feel like a distant echo. And Gus, our happy-go-lucky Gus, began to seem a little less carefree, a little more watchful. As if bracing himself for something he didn't understand, the air in the house was thick with unspoken words for weeks before the actual breakup. It hung heavy, like a storm cloud ready to burst. Sarah and I barely talked. We ate dinner in silence, watched television separately, slept in the same bed, but felt 1,000 miles apart. Gus was clearly picking up on it. He'd pace sometimes, or lie by the door, whimpering softly. He'd nudge my hand more often, seeking reassurance. One Tuesday night after another silent dinner, I couldn't take it anymore. I cleared my throat. "Sarah," I started, my voice sounding shaky even to my own ears. "We need to talk." She sighed, a long, weary sigh. "What about Alex?" Her voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. "About us," I said, looking at her across the dining table. Gus was lying under the table, his head resting on my foot, a warm, comforting presence. This isn't working. We're not happy. Are we? She didn't answer right away. She just stared at her hands folded on the table. No, she finally said, barely a whisper. No, we're not. And that was it. The dam broke. We talked for hours, really talked, for the first time in months, about how we had drifted apart, how our goals had changed, how the spark was gone. It was painful, raw, and full of tears. Mostly mine. Sarah was strangely calm, almost resigned. It felt like she had been preparing for this conversation for a long time. Then came the hardest part, the logistics. Who would move out? Who would take what? The house was mine from before we met, so she would move. We went through the furniture, the kitchenware, the books, each item a painful reminder of a shared life now ending. Then I paused. What about Gus? I asked, my voice catching in my throat. Sarah looked up, her eyes for the first time showing a flicker of emotion. Determination. I am taking him, she said, her voice firm. My blood ran cold. What? Number Sarah, you can't. He's my dog too. We got him together. I know, she said. But he's attached to me. I spend more time with him. I take him to the vet. I bought his favorite treats. That's not fair, I argued, my voice rising. Gus stirred under the table, his tail thumping once, slowly. I walk him every morning. I play with him for hours. He sleeps on my side of the bed. He loves me more, she stated almost defiantly. That cut deep. A childish taunt, but it stung. That's ridiculous. He loves us both. He's our dog. We should share him. She shook her head. No, Alex. This is a clean break. No sharing. It's too messy. I need him. I need his comfort. You'll be fine. You have the house. You have your friends. I felt a surge of anger, hot and desperate. So, you are just going to take him? Just like that? Yes, she said, her voice hardening. He's coming with me. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg. But something in her eyes told me it was useless. She had already made up her mind. And I was too emotionally drained from everything else to put up a real fight. Losing Gus felt like losing a limb, but fighting Sarah seemed futile. It would only drag out the pain. The next few days were a blur of packing boxes and quiet despair. Gus seemed to sense the finality of it all. He followed me around the house, his nose pressed against my leg. He'd lie down near Sarah's boxes, then get up and come lie near mine. He looked confused, his big brown eyes darting between us. The day she left was the worst day of my life, even worse than the conversation itself. Her car was packed. Goose was sitting patiently by the door, his leash in her hand. He looked at me, then at her, then back at me. I knelt down, trying to hold back the tears. Be a good boy, Gus, I whispered, burying my face in his fur. It was the last time I'd feel his soft coat, his warm body against me. He licked my cheek, a quick, sad lick. Sarah was already in the driver's seat. She opened the back door. Come on, Gus, she said, her voice flat. He looked at me one last time, a long, questioning look, then slowly, reluctantly, walked to the car. He jumped in, turned around once to look back at me through the window, and then settled onto the seat. I watched her car pull out of the driveway, Gus's face visible in the back window for a moment, then gone. And just like that, he was gone. My best friend, my furry anchor, the one constant in my life. He was gone with her. The silence that descended on the house was deafening, the kind of silence that screams. The dog bowl in the corner of the kitchen, suddenly so empty. The squeaky toy still lying under the coffee table, untouched. His bed, a comforting dent in the living room. Now just an empty space. I walked through the house touching things. His leash hanging on the hook by the door. His favorite blanket draped over the back of the couch. Each item was a sharp pang in my chest. A physical ache. It felt like a part of me had been ripped away, leaving a gaping, bleeding wound. I sat on the floor in the living room, right where his bed used to be, and I cried. I cried until my eyes were swollen and my throat was raw. I cried for Sarah, for the relationship we lost, for the future that would never be. But mostly, I cried for Gus, for his warm fur, his happy barks, his comforting presence, for the unconditional love I felt from him, which now felt lost forever. The breakup with Sarah was one thing. The loss of Gus was a whole different kind of pain. It was a heart-shattering, soul-crushing void. And I had no idea how I was ever going to fill it. The first few weeks after Sarah and Gus left were a blur of grief. The house, once full of life and the happy sounds of a dog, felt like a tomb. Every corner, every room echoed with his absence. I'd wake up in the morning and automatically reach for him, only to find an empty spot on the bed. I'd walk into the kitchen and expect to see him waiting for his breakfast, his tail thumping against the cabinets. Instead, there was just silence. His toys were still scattered around the living room. I couldn't bring myself to pick them up, to put them away. They were like small, painful monuments to a life that was no longer mine. His favorite rope toy, chewed to threads, lay by the couch. His squeaky ball, now silent, sat beneath the coffee table. I'd sometimes kick them accidentally, and a fresh wave of sadness would wash over me. Walking was the worst. My morning routine used to be a walk with Gus. We'd go to the park or just around the block, him sniffing every tree and bush, me enjoying the quiet company. Now, the mornings felt longer, emptier. I tried to go for walks alone, but every dog I saw, every person walking a golden retriever, was a knife to the heart. I'd see them playing fetch, or just trotting happily beside their owner, and I'd feel this overwhelming pang of envy and loss. I started avoiding the park altogether, choosing instead to walk through the neighborhood streets, eyes downcast, trying to block out the world. My friends tried to help. They invited me out, tried to distract me. "You need to get out, Alex," they'd say. "Don't just sit around the house." I appreciated it. I really did. But it was hard to pretend to be okay. Every conversation felt forced. Every laugh felt hollow. How could I explain that it wasn't just a breakup? It was losing my best friend, my shadow, my family. I tried contacting Sarah a few times. Not to get back together, never that. Just to ask about Gus. The first text I sent was short, polite. "Hey Sarah, hope you are doing okay. How's Gus?" No reply. I waited a few days, then tried again. Just checking in about Gus. "Is he settling in all right?" Still nothing. Then I called. She picked up on the third ring. Her voice was cold. "What do you want, Alex?" "I just want to know how Gus is," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Is he okay?" There was a long pause. "He's fine," she said finally. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "He's adapting. Can I see him sometime? Just for a little bit." I knew it was a long shot, but I had to ask. "No," she said immediately, sharply. "I told you, Alex, clean break. No messy attachments, it's better this way. But he's my dog too, Sarah." I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. "I miss him. He must miss me." "He's fine," she repeated, her voice even colder now. "He's with me. He's happy. You need to move on, Alex. We both do. Goodbye." And then she hung up. The dial tone hummed in my ear, a mocking, empty sound. My heart sank. That was it. No contact, no news. Gus was just gone. She had drawn a clear line and there was no crossing it. It felt like she was punishing me, not just for the breakup, but for daring to care about Gus. Or maybe she was hurting too, and this was her way of coping. I didn't know. I just knew it hurt. Months turned into seasons, fall, then winter, then spring. The leaves changed colors, then fell. Then snow covered everything. Then green shoots appeared. My grief slowly dulled, but it never truly went away. It became a constant ache, a quiet background noise to my life. I started working more, spending extra hours at the office, trying to fill the void with productive activity. I went to the gym. I tried new hobbies. I even went on a few awkward dates that went nowhere. I packed away Gus's toys eventually. It was hard, but I knew I had to do it. His bed stayed though, tucked away in the corner, covered with a sheet, a quiet shrine to a lost companion. I just couldn't bring myself to get rid of it. It felt too final, too much like erasing him completely from my life. And I couldn't do that. Sometimes, late at night, I'd pull out my phone and scroll through old pictures and videos. Gus as a puppy, clumsy and adorable. Goose chasing a ball in the yard, his ears flapping in the wind. Gus curled up on the couch, snoring softly. Gus licking Sarah's face. Those videos would sometimes make me smile, sometimes make me cry. They were memories, fading but still there. And with each one the same question would echo in my mind. Is he okay? Is he happy? Does he remember me? I tried to tell myself he was fine. Sarah would take care of him even if she was angry with me. She loved him too, right? That's what I kept telling myself. She wouldn't hurt him. She wouldn't neglect him. She loved him too much. But there was always a tiny, persistent doubt, a cold whisper in the back of my mind. The way she sounded on the phone, so cold, so distant. The complete lack of empathy. It left me wondering. But there was nothing I could do. I was helpless. Goose was gone, and I had no way of knowing anything about him. Until that Tuesday afternoon, a year and a half later, when the ghost of my past, my living, breathing ghost, appeared on my doorstep. It was a Tuesday afternoon, just like any other. The sun was warm, but a crisp fall breeze hinted at colder days to come. I was trying to focus on work, staring at my laptop screen, but my mind kept drifting. I had a deadline, but my motivation was low. The house was quiet, too quiet, as usual. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint chirping of birds outside. I was contemplating making a sandwich when I heard it. A soft scratching sound at the front door. Not a knock, just a persistent, gentle scrape. My first thought was a delivery driver, maybe leaving a package, but usually they ring the doorbell. Then I heard a faint whine, a small, almost imperceptible sound. My blood ran cold. My heart gave a strange lurch. I tried to dismiss it. It was probably a stray cat, or maybe a neighbor's dog that had gotten loose. It couldn't be, not after all this time. But the whine came again, a little louder this time, more desperate. And then a hesitant thump against the door, like something collapsing. My mind raced. What if someone was hurt? What if it was a wild animal? I got up slowly, my legs feeling heavy, and walked towards the front door. Every step felt magnified, the silence of the house pressing in on me. I reached the door, took a deep breath and peered through the peephole. My breath hitched. It was hard to make out blurry, but there was a shape on my porch, a familiar shape. My fingers fumbled, cold and clumsy. I twisted it, slowly, cautiously, and pulled the door open a crack, and then I saw him, lying crumpled on my welcome mat, his head up, his eyes meeting mine. Those eyes, unmistakable. My world tilted. It was Gus. He was thin, so thin I could count his ribs even through his matted fur. His coat, once so lustrous, was dull and tangled, full of burrs and what looked like patches of missing fur. There was a faint gash on his nose and a small tear in his ear. He looked exhausted, like he had traveled a very, very long way. "Gus?" I whispered again, my voice catching in my throat. It was like I was dreaming, a cruel, beautiful dream. He whined again, a weak, hopeful sound. His tail, which used to wag with furious enthusiasm, gave one slow, tired thump against the wooden porch. Just one. And then he pushed himself up, slowly, painfully, onto all fours. He took a single, wobbly step towards me. That was all it took. The sight of him, so broken, so tired, but still trying to reach me, shattered whatever emotional dam I had left. Tears sprang to my eyes, hot and overwhelming. My vision blurred. "Oh, Gus!" I sobbed, dropping to my knees on the porch, not caring about the splinters or the dirt. "Oh, my boy." He hobbled the last few steps, and then he was there. His head nuzzled into my chest, a desperate, familiar pressure. I wrapped my arms around him, burying my face in his dirty fur, feeling the bony ridge of his spine, the slight tremor in his body. He was real. He was here. He licked my ear, a rough, dry lick, and then let out a soft sigh, leaning his full weight against me. It was the most perfect, most painful, most beautiful reunion. All the months of missing him, all the unspoken grief, rushed through me like a tidal wave. I held him tight, feeling his ragged breathing against my chest. He smelled like road and dust and something wild, but also, unmistakably, like home, like us. After a long moment, I managed to pull myself up, carefully supporting his weight. He was surprisingly light, alarmingly so. "Come on, boy," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "Let's get you inside." He followed me slowly, a limp in his front left leg that I hadn't noticed at first. He walked with a tired resolve, his eyes scanning the familiar surroundings of the living room, his nose twitching. He went straight to the corner where his water bowl used to sit, even though it had been empty for months. I just never put it away. It was a silent, aching reminder. I rushed to the kitchen, filled his old bowl with fresh, cool water. He drank it down in desperate gulps, water sloshing over the sides. He drank like he hadn't seen water in days, maybe weeks. Then he looked up at me, his eyes full of a quiet plea. I found an old bag of dog food in the back of the pantry. It was probably stale, but it was all I had. Poured a small amount into his food bowl, and he devoured it, quickly, methodically, not even pausing to chew. My heart ached for him. How long had he been on his own? He finished the food, then looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. He was exhausted. He needed rest. I remembered his old bed tucked away in my closet. I pulled it out, shook off the dust, and placed it in the living room. He walked to it slowly, sniffed it, then circled once, twice before collapsing onto it with a deep sigh. Curled into a tight ball, his head resting on his paws, his eyes still fixed on me. They held a silent promise. He was home. I sat on the floor beside him, just watching him breathe, watching his chest rise and fall. The shocking jolt of his sudden reappearance gave way to a profound sense of peace. He was here. He was back. But a new kind of dread started to creep in. What now? What did this mean for me? For Sarah? And for Gus himself? I knew deep down this was just the beginning of another difficult chapter. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. Goose was here, and somehow that made everything feel possible again. The first few days with Gus back were a whirlwind of emotion and urgent tasks. The immediate priority was his health. I called the vet the moment he finished eating, explaining the situation in a rush of words. They squeezed me in for an emergency appointment that evening. The vet, Dr. Evans, was a kind older woman who had seen Gus since he was a puppy. Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw him. "My goodness, Gus," she murmured, her voice full of concern. "What happened to you, old boy?" She examined him thoroughly. Gus was remarkably cooperative, barely flinching as she probed his sore spots and cleaned his wounds. He was severely underweight, nearly 20 pounds below his healthy weight. His fur was matted and had evidence of burrs and foxtails, deeply embedded, suggesting he had spent a lot of time in overgrown areas. The gash on his paw was infected, and his ear tear looked like an old injury. He also had a persistent cough, which Dr. Evans said could be anything from kennel cough to a mild respiratory infection from exposure. "He's a very lucky dog, Alex," Dr. Evans said, looking up from her notes. "He's clearly been through a lot. Malnutrition, exposure, minor injuries. But no broken bones, no major internal issues that I can detect right now. He's got a strong heart and a strong will, it seems. We'll get him back to full health." She gave him fluids, a powerful antibiotic shot for the infection, some pain medication, and a dewormer. She also gave me a special high-calorie food prescription and strict instructions for a gradual refeeding plan. "Don't let him eat too much too fast," she warned. "It could make him sick. Small, frequent meals." Even home, I dedicated myself to his recovery. Every 2 hours, I'd give him a small portion of the special food. He ate it eagerly, never once turning his nose up. He drank constantly. I carefully cleaned his paw wound and the cut on his ear, applying the prescribed ointment. His fur was a different challenge. It was so matted in places that I had to gently cut some of the larger clumps out. It took hours, slowly, carefully, with lots of breaks for him to rest. He whined a little, but mostly he just lay there, eyes closed, trusting me. He slept a lot. Deep, heavy sleep, sometimes twitching as if dreaming of his ordeal. But when he was awake, he was constantly by my side. If I went to the kitchen, he'd slowly get up and follow me. If I sat on the couch, he'd rest his head on my lap. The silent presence I had missed so desperately was back, but now it was tinged with a quiet resilience. Slowly, day by day, he began to improve. His eyes gained a bit more sparkle. His steps became a little more steady, the limp in his leg lessened. His tail started to thump more often, sometimes even wagging for a few enthusiastic seconds, when I returned from a quick trip to the mailbox. His old playful spark returned in small bursts. He'd nudge his head against my hand for a scratch, or gently push his nose into my palm. But the mystery of how he got back gnawed at me. My house was a 2-day drive from Sarah's last known address. Had he walked all that way? It seemed impossible. Was he just wandering for months, covering hundreds of miles, or had someone helped him? Had Sarah dropped him off somewhere? The thoughts swirled in my head, a confusing, painful mess of possibilities. I found myself observing Gus for clues. Did he seem afraid of anything new? Did certain sounds or smells trigger a reaction? He seemed a little more cautious around strangers now, but still gentle. He flinched slightly at loud noises, like a car backfiring, but he wasn't overtly traumatized. It was hard to tell. He was just so happy to be home, so content to be back by my side. I wrestled with the idea of contacting Sarah. Part of me wanted to confront her, to demand an explanation. Did she abandon him? Did she lose him? What kind of person would let a dog, our dog, end up like this? The anger would flare up hot and righteous. But then another part of me was afraid. Afraid of what she would say. Afraid of what she might have done, and most of all, afraid she might try to take Gus back. The thought sent a cold wave of panic through me. I couldn't lose him again, not after he had fought so hard to come back to me. He was clearly safe and happy here. This was his home now more than ever. I hesitated to post anything on social media. What if someone recognized Gus and reported him? What if Sarah herself saw it? It felt like I was living with a precious stolen secret. But he wasn't stolen. He came home. He chose me. Quiet days were filled with Gus's slow but steady recovery. And my mind was filled with unanswered questions. The bond between us felt stronger than ever, forged in the fires of separation and hardship. But the shadow of the unknown still hung over us. I knew, eventually, I would have to find out what happened, for Gus's sake. And for my own peace of mind. But for now, just having him back, warm and breathing beside me, was enough. Almost enough. The days turned into weeks, and Gus continued to mend. He was gaining weight steadily, his fur slowly regaining its golden luster, and the light had fully returned to his eye. Chased squirrels in the yard again, barked at the mailman with his old enthusiastic rumble, and even brought me his squeaky toy, a clear invitation to play. He was healing, body and soul. But I wasn't. The mystery of his return was a constant itch in my mind, a puzzle with too many missing pieces. I kept trying to figure it out. How far had he traveled? How did he survive? And what about Sarah? I started my own quiet investigation. I couldn't risk contacting Sarah directly, not yet. Not without knowing if she even knew Gus was gone, or if she would try to reclaim him. My primary concern was Gus's safety and well-being. I started by casually asking mutual friends if they had heard from Sarah. I framed it lightly like, "Hey, haven't heard from Sarah in a while, how's she doing?" Most hadn't heard much. A few said she had moved out of state for a new job shortly after our breakup, which was consistent with what she had said on the phone that last time. But no one knew exactly where. No one knew anything about Gus. It was as if she had simply vanished. I decided to try social media cautiously. Sarah had always been pretty active online. I typed her name into the search bar, feeling a nervous tremor in my hands. Her profile popped up. It was mostly private now, but I could see her profile picture. It was a new one, just her, no Gus. Echoing through her old public posts, I saw some from before the breakup. Pictures of her and Gus at the park or cuddling on the couch. My heart ached looking at them. Then the posts just stopped abruptly around the time she moved. No new public updates, nothing. This just deepened the mystery. Had she truly just dropped off the face of the earth, taking Gus with her? Did she even care that he was gone? I spent hours researching lost dog stories online, reading about dogs who traveled hundreds of miles to return home. It wasn't unheard of, but it was incredibly rare. Most of those dogs were microchipped, and the owners were tracked down. Gus had been microchipped when we adopted him, but it was registered under both our names, and Sarah was the primary contact since she handled all the vet appointments after we moved. If someone found him and scanned his chip, they would have called her first. If he was found and she reported him missing, why would he show up at my door in this condition? It just didn't add up. The thought of what Gus might have endured on his journey made my stomach clench. Had he been starving? Had he been cold? Had he been hit by a car? The limping, the cuts, the emaciation. He hadn't just been on a pleasant stroll. He had been through hell, and knowing that, not knowing why, was torment. I felt a growing anger towards Sarah. How could she let this happen to him? Even if she didn't want him, even if she couldn't keep him, there were shelters, there were rescues to let him just wander and suffer. It was unthinkable. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, stroking Gus's soft fur as he napped beside me. He let out a contented sigh, a sound I hadn't heard in so long. Looking at him, so peaceful and trusting, I knew I had to push past my fear and find out the truth. Not just for my peace of mind, but for him. He deserved to have his story told, to have justice for whatever he went through. And I deserved to know what kind of person Sarah truly was. I considered hiring a private investigator, but that felt extreme and expensive. What was I even looking for? Proof of abandonment. My goal wasn't to get Sarah in trouble. It was just to understand. No, the only way to get answers was to face her. The thought sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I hadn't seen her in 18 months. The last conversation was a harsh, cold dismissal. What would she say? How would she react? Would she even talk to me? I tried to mentally prepare myself. I'd stay calm, I'd focus on Gus. I'd ask direct questions. I needed to know, once and for all, what happened to my dog. It wouldn't bring back the relationship we had, but it might bring some closure, some understanding to Gus's ordeal. I pulled up her old address on my phone. The apartment building she had moved to was about a 2-hour drive away. I'd make the trip on a Saturday when I knew she would likely be home. I wrote down her building number, her apartment number. My hand was shaking slightly. This was it. This was the moment I would finally confront the ghost of my past and demand answers for the return of my living, breathing ghost. The anticipation was terrifying, but the need to know was stronger. Gus deserved to have his story told, and I was the only one who could get it for him. The drive to Sarah's old apartment building felt endless. 2 hours of the same highway, the same thoughts swirling in my head. What would I say? How would she react? What if she wasn't even there anymore? That was a real possibility. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. Gus was at home, safe with a friend who had agreed to watch him. I couldn't risk bringing him with me. I pulled into the parking lot of the familiar apartment complex. It was a sprawling collection of beige buildings, all looking identical. I found her building, parked, and walked towards the entrance, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I buzzed her apartment number. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. My stomach dropped. Of course. She probably moved. My research was already outdated. All this worry for nothing. I stood there for a minute, feeling deflated, frustrated. Then I decided to walk around the building just in case. Maybe she was outside getting mail or taking out trash. Anything. I walked around to the back of the building, where there was a small patch of grass, and that's when I saw her. She was sitting on a bench facing away from me, talking on her phone. Her hair was shorter now, styled differently, but it was unmistakably Sarah. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. I hesitated, a knot of fear and anger tightening in my chest. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave, just drive home and pretend this never happened. Keep Gus safe and forget about the answers. But then I looked down at my hands, remembering Gus's skeletal frame, the deep gashes on his paw. I couldn't. I had to know. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and started walking towards her. My footsteps felt heavy, each one an announcement. She must have sensed my presence because she turned her head. Her eyes widened, her phone dropping slightly from her ear. She looked shocked, almost scared. Her face paled. "Alex," she whispered, her voice barely audible.
"Sarah," I said, my voice steady, though my insides were churning.
We need to talk. She immediately stood up, clutching her phone. What are you doing here? How did you find me? Her voice was sharper now, defensive. It's about Gus, I said, cutting straight to the chase. No small talk, no pleasantries. Her face went blank. Gus. She repeated, as if she didn't know the name. Yes, Gus, I said, my voice rising slightly. Came back to me last month. He was starving, injured, a mess. What happened, Sarah? What did you do to him? Her eyes darted around, avoiding mine. She chewed on her lip, a nervous habit I remembered well. I don't know what you are talking about, she mumbled. Don't lie to me, Sarah. I snapped, my composure cracking. All the suppressed anger, the worry, the pain, burst to the surface. He was found near my house, hundreds of miles from here, in terrible condition. He was your dog. You took him. What happened? Did you lose him? Did you abandon him? She flinched at the word abandon. Her eyes finally met mine, and for a fleeting moment I saw something in them. Fear, shame, guilt. It's complicated, she said, her voice low. Complicated? I scoffed, her bitter laugh escaping my lips. Complicated is our breakup. Complicated is trying to move on. Gus showing up at my door, half dead, after you took him, is not complicated. It's a question of what kind of person you are. She visibly recoiled, her shoulders slumped. Look, Alex, I know it looks bad. It is bad, Sarah, I retorted, my voice tight with controlled fury. He was my dog. He was our dog. He was family. What happened to him? She took a shaky breath, then another. She finally looked at the ground, unable to meet my gaze. I couldn't keep him, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you mean you couldn't keep him? I pressed, leaning closer. You insisted on taking him. You said you needed him. You said he loved you more. The old wounds of our breakup were fresh again, bleeding into the new ones. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. It wasn't like that. After I moved, my new job was demanding, way more than I expected. I was working 70 hours a week. I had to travel a lot. Gus was alone too much. My heart tightened. So you just left him alone for days at a time? No, she cried, finally looking up, her eyes full of misery. I hired a dog walker at first, but it was expensive. And then I tried doggy daycare, but he wasn't happy there. He got depressed. He wasn't eating. He missed you, Alex. He missed the yard. He missed the life he had with us. She paused, taking another ragged breath. I tried. I really did. But I was so overwhelmed. I was alone in a new city, trying to keep up with work, and Gus was. He was just too much for me. I felt like I was failing him. And it hurt. It hurt so much to see him so sad. A cold dread settled in my stomach. So what did you do? I asked, my voice flat, almost devoid of emotion I already knew. I could feel it. She squeezed her eyes shut. A single tear tracked down her cheek. I drove him to a park, a big one, outside of town. I thought someone would find him. Someone who could give him a better life. Someone who had the time he deserved. I left his favorite blanket with him and a bag of food. I thought I was doing the right thing. For him. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My blood ran cold. She abandoned him. She actually abandoned him. My head reeled. All the anger I had felt, all the questions, now morphed into a profound, aching sadness. Not just for Gus, but for the person I thought Sarah was. The person I loved. You left him, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. You just left him there. You threw him away. She opened her eyes, swollen and red. I know, Alex. I know it was wrong. I've lived with that guilt every single day. I couldn't stop thinking about him. I tried to go back and find him a few days later, but he was gone. I searched for weeks. I put up posters. I called shelters. Nothing. I thought he was gone forever. I thought I had killed him. I am so sorry, Alex. I am so sorry. Alex, I am so sorry. Her voice broke into a sob. She looked genuinely distraught, racked with guilt. But it was too late. The damage was done. Gus had suffered because of her choices. He came home, Sarah, I said, my voice quiet now, empty of anger, filled only with a deep, weary sorrow. Came home to me. He found his way back all by himself, and he almost died doing it. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face, a look of profound shock and disbelief on her features. He came back, she whispered. To you? How is that even possible? I didn't answer. There was nothing more to say. The truth was out, the painful, heartbreaking truth. Gus was home, and that was all that mattered. Sarah stood there, tears streaming down her face, staring at me as if I had just told her Gus had come back from the moon. The shock on her face was palpable, a mix of disbelief and dawning horror. He came back, she repeated, her voice a fragile whisper. To you? How is that even possible? I don't know how, Sarah, I said, my voice flat, drained of emotion. The anger I had felt just moments before had evaporated, replaced by a deep, hollow sadness. He'd just showed up on my doorstep a month ago, emaciated, injured, terrified, but he made it. She covered her mouth with her hand, a soft sob escaping her lips. Oh my God, she choked out. Oh, Gus, I thought he was gone forever. I was so worried. I was so sick with guilt. Guilt. Yes, she looked guilty, but it was a guilt that came too late after too much suffering. You left him in a park, I stated, not as a question but as a confirmation. You abandoned him. I know, she cried, her voice rising in desperation. I know it sounds awful. It was awful. I was desperate, Alex. I was so overwhelmed. My job was insane. I was barely sleeping. I was alone. Gus was so sad too. He wasn't eating. He kept whining. He wasn't himself. He needed more than I could give him. I honestly thought, I truly believed that if I left him somewhere safe, someone would find him. Someone good. Someone who could give him the life he deserved, better than what I could give him then. Her words tumbled out, a frantic confession. I drove him to that park. It was huge. Lots of people walking their dogs. I left his favorite blanket and a small bag of food. I watched him for a while. He seemed okay. And then I got back in the car and drove away. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I cried the whole way home. I hated myself for it. She paused, taking a shaky breath. I went back the next day and the day after that. I searched for weeks, Alex. I drove all over that area. I put up flyers. I called every shelter within 100-mile radius. I even posted online, anonymously, asking if anyone had seen a golden retriever. Nothing. No one. I eventually gave up hope. I thought something bad had happened to him. I convinced myself that I had killed him. She looked up at me, her eyes red and pleading. I truly believed I was doing what was best for him, even if it was the worst thing I could do. I was so messed up back then, I wasn't thinking straight. I just wanted him to be happy, and I knew he wasn't happy with me anymore. He was losing weight. He was lethargic. He missed his old life. He missed you. I saw it. Her confession was raw, desperate, and filled with genuine remorse. Part of me, the old me who loved her, wanted to believe her, wanted to offer comfort. But the part of me that had watched Gus suffer, that had nursed him back to health, couldn't. The image of him, frail and injured on my porch, overshadowed everything else. He traveled hundreds of miles, Sarah, I said, my voice still quiet, through who knows what. He nearly died. All because you couldn't handle him anymore. There were other options, shelters, rescues, even bringing him back to me if you truly felt he belonged here. But you didn't. You chose to abandon him. She winced, the word hitting her hard. I know, she whispered again. It was a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life. I was selfish. I was weak. I was scared. I couldn't face bringing him back to you. It was too soon after the breakup. It felt like a failure. And I convinced myself he'd be better off with someone else. Someone anonymous. Someone new. The truth was out. It wasn't a malicious act. Not in her mind. But an act of desperation and incredible negligence born from her own struggles. It was still devastating. Gus had suffered because of her. And the person she was, the one I had loved, had made a choice that put an innocent creature in grave danger. He's home now, I said, my voice firming. He's with me, and he's never leaving again. She looked up, a glimmer of something I couldn't quite decipher in her eyes. Resignation? Relief? I'm glad, she said. Truly. I hope you can forgive me someday, Alex. For everything. For Gus. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw a woman who was clearly still carrying a lot of pain. But my pain, Gus's pain, felt heavier. Forgiveness felt impossible right then. Not for her, not for Gus. I need to go, I said, turning away. There was nothing left to say. The conversation was over, the truth was out, and it was exactly as heartbreaking as I had feared. Goose's journey back home had been a testament to his loyalty and resilience. But it was also a stark reminder of how deeply he had been let down. As I walked away, leaving Sarah sobbing on the park bench, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The mystery was solved, the questions answered, and now all that was left was to truly heal. Not from Sarah, not anymore, but to heal the wound that Gus's absence had left, and to make sure he never felt that kind of fear or abandonment ever again. He was mine now, fully and completely. And that was all that mattered. Driving away from Sarah, leaving her on that park bench, felt like closing a very long, very painful chapter of my life. The anger had finally subsided, replaced by a quiet, settled sadness. Truth about Gus's journey was devastating, but at least now I knew. The mystery was gone, and with it, the gnawing uncertainty. When I got home, Gus's friend Mike greeted me at the door. Goose bounded out from behind him, tail wagging like crazy, his eyes shining. He was back to his old self, energetic and happy. He sniffed me all over, as if checking to make sure I was okay after my absence. I knelt down and hugged him tight, burying my face in his now soft, clean fur. This was my home. This was my home. This was my boy. I told Mike a very condensed version of what happened. He just shook his head, his face grim. Some people, he muttered, but Gus is a fighter. And he knew where home was. Over the next few weeks, Gus's recovery was complete. He gained all his weight back. His fur grew out thick and shiny, and the limp in his paw disappeared completely. He was back to being the goofy, loving, energetic golden retriever I knew and adored. He'd bring me his squeaky toy multiple times a day, demanding playtime. He'd curl up on the couch beside me every evening, a warm, comforting weight. He snored on his old bed, which now held a permanent dent from his beloved presence. My life, too, began to settle into a new rhythm. The void that Sarah had left, that Gus's absence had magnified, was finally gone. It wasn't just that Gus was back. It was that he was back because he wanted to be. He had fought through unimaginable hardship to get to me. That bond, forged in the fires of separation and resilience, was unbreakable. It was a testament to a love that went beyond mere ownership. He was my family, and I was his. I occasionally thought about Sarah. Sometimes I'd wonder if her guilt had led her to change, to be a better person, but mostly I didn't. The raw emotional connection was severed. There was no going back, not for me, not for her, not for Gus. She had made her choice, and Gus had made his. His choice was me, and that was all I needed. My walks with Gus became a source of pure joy again. We'd go to the park, and he'd chase squirrels with newfound enthusiasm. He'd greet other dogs with a happy wag, and people would often stop to pet him, commenting on his beautiful fur and gentle nature. I'd smile, a genuine, unforced smile, and tell them he was the best boy. One day I was sitting in the yard, watching Gus dig a comical hole near a rose bush, his tail wagging furiously. The sun was warm on my face. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves in the trees. Everything felt right. Everything felt complete. I thought about the night Sarah left, how I thought my heart would never heal, how I thought I had lost everything, but I hadn't. I had lost a relationship that wasn't meant to be, but I had gained a profound understanding of loyalty, resilience, and unconditional love. Gus had shown me what true devotion looked like. He had taught me that sometimes the ones who are truly meant to be in your life will find their way back, no matter how far they have to travel. Trotted over to me, a proud smile on his face, a clump of dirt on his nose. He dropped a stick at my feet, an invitation to play. I picked it up and threw it, watching him bound after it, full of life and joy. Life wasn't perfect, but it was full. It was quiet sometimes, but it was never empty. I had my best friend back. He was my shadow again, my companion, my family. And his presence was a constant reminder that even after the darkest storms, there is always hope. There is always home. And sometimes, home finds its way back to you.